Elena looked out the window. Sirius had arrived after all. You say he's already here? I feel so sorry for him after all. And why should an innocent child who is barely 10 years old have to go through something like this? His Imperial Majesty has really gone too far. One of the maids said in a quiet whisper. An innocent child, you say? You really don't know anything about him. Elena thought to herself. The circumstances of Sirius Hyperion's birth were too unusual, so it was hard to call him an innocent child. Although he had imperial blood flowing in him, he was an illegitimate child. It was also a problem that Sirius was born in the form of a wolf, not a human. Legend had it that wolf blood flowed in the veins of the ruling Hyperion dynasty. In other words, Sirius is the coming of the wolf, 300 years later. Sirius's mother was a warrior who became a legend in the Empire. At the time Sirius was still young, she was struck by an incurable disease. After a while, the woman died. When Sirius was born, the crown prince's place was already taken. The emergence of a powerful being caused chaos in a regime that was particularly stable. As a result, the crown prince got rid of everyone who demanded that Sirius be granted the title of Lord of the Empire. He also killed his own father. However, the crown prince was never able to kill Sirius. Killing the one who is the coming of the wolf that everyone had been looking forward to for a long 300 years was like destroying the myth of the imperial family. The crown prince believed in the myths and legends that pertained to his family. After ascending the throne, he became even more sensitive to the matter. When Sirius was 10 years old, the prince exiled him to the Duchy of Lowood, located in the north of the empire. What's the matter? With such a wild frost in the courtyard, you should lock yourself in your room instead of looking out of the window, said the sister who approached. Elena disliked her relatives as they treated her rather badly. Duke Loud originally had 7 children. The first son went hunting alone, but never returned. The Duke reacted rather calmly to the death of his son. When the Duke received the news, he only sighed heavily and continued reading his book. The Duke's second son died after trying to drink a small amount of poison to develop a resistance to poisoning. The third daughter had committed suicide. She could not handle the pressure the Duke was putting on her. The Duke's 6th son died of a cold. At this point, the Duke's entire offspring consisted of eldest daughter Courtney, son Joseph, and youngest daughter Helen. The crown prince sent his brother Sirius to the Duke, hoping that he would break down and die. Duke Lowood was known for his cold temper and cruelty. One day, Elena woke up as a character in a rather popular book. It told how the main character, hated by everyone, overcame all obstacles to ascend to the throne. Elena got used to her fate pretty quickly. She decided for herself that knowing the plot in the future will simply live without interfering in the story. Knowing the future could help her cope with the difficulties ahead. Elena knew that her family would eventually be destroyed. All she had to do was survive by finding a way not to die. I got to follow the shadow of the novel's main character, Sirius. He'll have his own completely sorted out, and I'll quietly remove myself once the Lowood family has collapsed, thought Elena, falling asleep. Suddenly the girl heard voices outside her room. She noticed that her door was ajar. Elena carefully climbed down to her bed and silently walked to the door. Elena reached for the doorknob to close it, but suddenly, someone outside abruptly swung it open. Elena literally ran into the main character of the story, Sirius. I thought the door opened from a draft, said Sirius. I always thought I should live like an invisible person. That's right. The first day Sirius Hyperion arrived, I ran into him. I can safely say that he is very handsome, thought Elena. Elena knew that in time, Sirius's face would be praised, saying that although he was crazy, he was still bloody handsome. Looking at him, it would be impossible not to fall in love. However, no matter how handsome he was, he would kill more than a dozen of his brides in the future. I'm sorry for what happened, mumbled Elena. She was a little afraid that crazy Sirius would somehow hurt her. You're quite pretty and you look like Duke Loud. Who are you? asked Sirius to the girl. I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Elena Lowood. It turns out you're the youngest child in the family, noted Sirius. The girl noted to herself in surprise that he knew her and her family. Is this your room? Asked Sirius. Elena's room was rather plain. There was nothing interesting in it. There was nothing in her interior that caught the eye. Exactly the same, mumbled Sirius. Elena didn't realize what he was talking about just now. Was the room exactly the same as he had imagined? No, it's unlikely he pictured this room when he heard about me. Usually, when people imagine a ducal daughter's room, a bed with a pink canopy and a cute sofa for the children appears in front of their eyes. Thought Elena. Elena's room looked rather dismal. It didn't even have a single plush toy in it. The Duke felt that his youngest daughter should prove herself worthy of being bathed in luxury. It was up to her to show how much she fit in with the Lowood family. Is he going to keep looking at my room? I was actually going to be alone. I wasn't expecting any guests today. Elena thought wistfully. Judging by your answers, you don't have a single twist in your head. You're completely useless, said Sirius, and walked out of the girl's room. There is a saying that among the treasures of the Lowood family, the most valuable is the golden color of the eyes. His youngest daughter's eyes are indeed like gems. She is quite mild in character, noted Sirius to himself. All in all, out of all the people I've met here, she's the most unusual character. Her looks completely fit the description of the Lowood family, yet she seems like the weakest link. She won't be of any use to me. I see everyone is gathered. Then let me introduce our guest. This is His Imperial Majesty's younger brother, His Highness Sirius Hyperion. He will be staying in our house from now on, Duke Laud announced. Look, may I know the reason for His Highness coming to our house? Inquired Courtney. His Majesty has asked me to look into his brother's education. His Highness Sirius will be studying with you, replied the Duke. There's a nasty atmosphere in this room again. Well, it's time for me to get used to it. But how will Prince Sirius survive in these conditions? Elena thought to herself. For a man who was thrown out of the imperial palace and ended up in the hands of a not-so-famous duke and his crazy family, Sirius looks pretty calm. There's absolutely no emotion on his face. What's there on his face? He doesn't have any emotion at all. It feels like he forbids himself from feeling anything. I'm sure of it, since my golden eyes can't be wrong. I can easily read other people's emotions. The golden eye granted to the ducal family of Lowood had the ability to read another person's emotions, and the purer the gold color was, the more vivid the ability was. Elena had bright golden eyes. Everyone else in her family had eyes that were completely different colors with a golden glare. You, Your Highness, must follow the Lowood family's educational policy. If you don't have any objections, I will become a teacher for you from now on. Do you agree? Asked the Duke to his guest. I am willing to follow the Emperor's order. From now on, you, Duke Laud, will be my teacher. From now on, you no longer need to take a formal tone with me, replied Sirius. Your standard answer is very boring, said the Duke. Elena guessed that her father wanted to trigger Sirius's emotions. He wanted to throw him off balance. However, Sirius remained calm. Father, we will help His Highness in any way we can, said Courtney in a loud voice. If you are up to it, then go ahead, replied the Duke to his daughter. As the Duke walked past Elena, she heard him call her a lowlife. Pull yourself together, Elena. What you heard just now is only a hallucination. He couldn't have said such a thing. I know my father dislikes me for inheriting the family's golden eye as described in the ancient books. My eyes are unprecedented, thought Elena. The girl's eyes possessed the most powerful ability to see the emotions of others. This ability was so strong that when the emotions she saw reached the girl's body, she could feel them physically. Elena knew that if the visible emotions didn't move or shimmer in any way, they weren't real. It seems that my father has thrown me a challenge. Your Highness Sirius, if there was a capital city here, then naturally we should have created a comfortable learning experience for you. However, this isn't the capital. It's the Duchy of Lowood, said Courtney. From what I heard, Your Highness was assigned the lowest-ranked room. As expected of Courtney, she immediately started trying to break it down. Yeah, showing off your advantage is a pretty effective way to mock, thought Elena. Even though Sirius is the Emperor's younger brother, everyone knows that the Emperor dreams of getting rid of him. Everyone and anyone knew that Sirius has no support behind him. That's why Courtney feels like her hands are untied. But how will Sirius behave? Will he continue to keep his mouth shut? That can't happen. After all, we're talking about a mad scion of the Imperial House right now. I'm very curious to see how this will turn out. At the moment, I'd better not stand out from the crowd. The right thing to do is to sneak out of here before anyone pays attention to me. I need to get back to my room as soon as possible. Elena heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw Sirius. Why is he here? And what about Courtney? Was she left standing there, rendered speechless by the shock? That's not likely to end well. Frightened, Elena thought. Freeze! Shouted Courtney, blocking the children's path. Sirius shook Elena's hand firmly. I'm actually not done talking. Shouldn't you have listened to me to the end? Shouted Courtney angrily. Elena noted to herself that her sister was surrounded by a bright red color. This told her that the girl was currently experiencing the emotion of anger. Elena felt her body begin to burn with searing flames. I don't even know if there's a need to listen to you, Sirius said in a calm, unemotional tone. Oh, that's it, I see. So you've decided to gain an ally to oppose me? Asked Courtney. You seriously chose our little sister as your ally? She's a total scum who doesn't belong in any of the rankings. In short, a useless worm, Joseph exclaimed, looking over his sister's shoulder. Joseph is right, as always. If Father hadn't told me not to bother you, I would have ripped those nasty gold eyes out a long time ago, said Courtney to her sister. Duke Lowood had often told his youngest daughter that if he had the chance, he would gladly pluck out her eyeballs and take them for himself. Helena herself was not happy about getting the unique eye color that pissed off everyone in her family. Because of this ability, I can't help but know that someone hates me. Right now, my body is so sore. It's like I've been beaten for hours on end, thought Elena. Anyway, there's absolutely no point in bullying you. It's not like you don't know how to stand up for yourself. Even if I step on you, it's unlikely you'll start squirming. By the way, Sirius will be having meals with you in the future, said Courtney. Sirius, at this point I'm talking to you nicely and asking you to adhere to the rules of our house. I don't remember letting you speak to me on a you basis, Sirius remarked in a calm voice. Elena noticed that his body began to glow with a white light. Finally, Sirius was able to show some emotion. The white light that enveloped him suggests that he is only mildly annoyed. He sees Courtney as an annoying fly, remarked Elena. The family rules you keep going on and on about, who made them? Asked Sirius to Courtney. Courtney opened her mouth in surprise. She hadn't expected a boy 10 years her junior to behave like this. Elena was glad that there was finally someone in the house who put Courtney in her place. If she made a single mistake in her words now, she could be accused of insulting her father. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm tired, said Sirius, and squeezed Elena's hand tightly and led her behind him. I apologize, mumbled Sirius, letting go of the girl's hand. I see. Sirius involuntarily grabbed my hand. Anyway, before my crazy relatives run out of the banquet hall, I need to get back to my cozy room in the attic as soon as possible. Elena thought and rushed to her room. Elena heard footsteps behind her. Sirius was silently following the girl. This behavior of the boy was extremely annoying to her. Maybe I should tell him not to follow me around? But how do you tell a crazy boy that? Elena thought. Why are you following me around? Actually, my room is this way. Or have you forgotten? Asked Elena, turning around abruptly. I remember that, replied Sirius. Elena noticed that Sirius was surrounded by a colorful palette of flowers. It spoke of his cheerful mood. What makes you think I'm stalking you anyway? asked Sirius. He's doing the room next to mine? He was just going to his room, not following me? Elena noted to herself with surprise. Why are you looking at me like that? Is there something you want to tell me? Inquired Sirius to the girl. No, I just want to wish you good dreams, replied a blushing Elena. This is embarrassing. I'm ready to fall through the ground with embarrassment. And what made me think he was following me around? Apparently I lost my last bit of sanity while running away, mumbled Elena. Father overreacted too. Even though I'm the youngest in the family, how could he put a boy unknown to me in the next room? Earlier, Courtney said she resented the fact that the Duke gave her instructions not to touch me. What could that possibly mean? If the Duke ordered me to stop the bullying threatening my life, then it proves once again how valuable the golden eye I possess is. Of course, Duke Law didn't treat me with such disdain at first. I vaguely remember my previous life. I fell asleep suddenly, and a moment later I was unexpectedly born from my mother's womb. When Elena opened her eyes after her birth, she saw the Duke's face. He was delighted to have a child with a unique eye color in his family. In the original story, Sirius was flawless and fully fit his role as the main character. The genre of the work was a mass-produced fantasy novel. The virtue requested from the protagonist in this type of novel is the punishment of evil. It is worth noting that there was no such thing as a protagonist in the novel. Sirius was too ruthless to create a romantic relationship. Sirius's goal was only to be the strongest in every sense of the word. Families who insisted on marrying to lure him into their nets were swept away. Duke Hugo Lowood was among them. He wanted to marry his daughter to the Duke. It was Duke Lowood who, as Sirius's teacher, had made him a crazy bastard. When Elena first saw her father, his body was covered in a white glow. The child will be named Elena. She will occupy a room facing the eastern garden. Provide her with the best of everything. Everything must be in abundance, the Duke ordered. At first, Elena was extremely surprised by the Duke's behavior. She remembered very well that in the novel, he was a character who was harsh with his children. So why does he show such care? Could it be because the seventh daughter was not in the novel? Elena had already decided that the story of the novel had completely changed, that her father was completely different from the one described in the book. But suddenly, an unpredictable incident happened. One day, the Duke entered his daughter's room surrounded by the color red. There was also a suffocating black haze hovering around him. It flashed through Elena's mind that she should run away immediately. Walking up to his daughter, the Duke squeezed her throat tightly. I can't understand a damn thing. You were born with Lauda's golden eye. You should have seen it coming and dodged the attack. The Duke hissed angrily. After this event, the Duke regularly conducted trials on his daughter to test her ability. What a ridiculous situation this is. Do those perfect golden eyes not possess any ability? The Duke muttered one day. Elena had been trying to win her father's favor for a long time, and that was her biggest mistake. She realized too late that Duke Lowood had no warm feelings for her from the beginning. All he cared about was the unique color of her eyes. When the Duke realized that Elena didn't have the abilities he needed, she dropped out of the race to succeed him. Her brother and sister began to bully her on a regular basis. Be that as it may, we need to be patient a little longer. I know my relatives will fall at the hands of Sirius. By the way, it's rather unusual for me to realize that my roommate has become the main character of a novel, thought Elena. Although I had an extremely embarrassing incident with him today, he will soon face all sorts of difficulties and forget about the recent mishap. By the way, it's been a long time since I've seen such sparkling lights that speak of purest joy. Was my appearance really that ridiculous? I guess it was, since I managed to make even Sirius himself laugh. I wonder what he's doing right now. Is he asleep already? Or is he still awake? Elena leaned her ear against the wall and began to listen. From behind the wall came quiet sobs. Definitely someone was crying. Is it really Sirius crying? But after all, even my older sister couldn't get him off balance. But why am I surprised? He's just an ordinary child. What should I do in this situation? Should I go to his room to comfort him? I thought Sirius's emotions were dulled, but it turns out that's not the case at all. What could have made him cry like that? I don't know what the cause of his tears are, but I don't feel like turning away from him. But as much as I feel sorry for him, if I go to his room now, I'll back out of my plan. I shouldn't do that. I'll sit back and do nothing. Let the situation resolve itself. But then again, he's just a kid who needs protection. I know what it's like to be hated by your own family. I don't think it would make a difference if I went to see him. There's finally someone in this house I can socialize with, so why am I going to ignore him? What if a variable appears in the story that completely distorts the entire plot? When the story changes its course, I won't know the future. In order for Sirius to kill Duke Loud's family, his emotional state must be unchanged. If I go into the next room to comfort Sirius, I'll have to confess to him that I was eavesdropping. What am I supposed to do if he has a temper tantrum? And on top of that, he and I aren't close enough for me to comfort him. There are dozens of reasons why I can't go into that room, so I need to stop thinking about it and get to sleep soon. Sirius's problems have nothing to do with me. Since Elena was plagued with remorse all night, she couldn't sleep until the wee hours of the morning. Elena threw a cardigan over herself and hurried to breakfast. When Elena opened the door of her room, she saw Sirius sitting on the windowsill. Why is he sitting across from my room? Was he waiting for me? If so, why? No, surely there has been some sort of misunderstanding again. Who am I anyway for him to be waiting for me? I was just scared for nothing. I've gotten myself into a bad situation again. Elena thought. Did you sleep well this night? Asked Elena to Sirius. The girl felt her cheeks flaming with shame. Yes, answered Sirius briefly. Well, goody then. It was such a simple conversation that it will eventually be erased from his memory. Now all I have to do is retreat quickly. Elena rejoiced to herself. Did you get any sleep? Sirius asked unexpectedly. Yes, thank you, I slept well, replied Elena. I'm confused that Sirius would ask me a question like that. Perhaps after crying all night he has become a friendlier person. I can see that his aura is pretty clear. The girl thought to herself. Sirius doesn't look like someone who cried throughout the night. Maybe I was just dreaming it? Either way, we need to hurry to the dining hall or I'm going to be late. Elena walked towards the dining hall. Sirius set off after her. When Elena entered the dining hall, no one was there. As usual, though. Elena was used to being ignored by everyone by now. In the Lowood family home, everyone ate at a strictly allotted time. There was also a division of who ate what. It was Elena's turn only when the rest of the family had finished their meal. Elena looked into the wok on the table. In it was tomato sauce. The girl was very excited about it. Wait, what are you going to do now? Asked Sirius, roughly grabbing the girl's arm. You and I are about to have breakfast. We have our own special rules, which I'm about to tell you about, replied Elena. And during breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we will have to go to the kitchen and bring our own food to the dining hall. On the plus side, we can spend the whole day with you in the dining room. No one will come in. The servants won't help us, Elena explained. I love that your house is so simply organized. There are no extra people messing around, said Sirius. What was going on in the Imperial Palace that Sirius is even happy about this attitude? Enough! I won't think about it anymore. I need to finish my meal soon and go back to my room, thought Elena. Sirius silently finished his tomato sauce, then also silently rose from the table and left the dining room. Elena watched from the second-floor window as the events on the training ground unfolded. Sirius had been wielding his sword quite confidently for some time. God, he's not just a man, he's a monster, Courtney exclaimed. Elena knew that today would be Sirius's first lesson as a Duke's apprentice. She wondered how he would act. The novel had described this day in a very colorful way. It was the protagonist's great first step. In the Duke's house, Elena had no friends. Even the servants did not want to communicate with her. All this was because the girl had a peculiar position. After the Duke stopped gifting his youngest daughter with love, people began to prophesy her imminent death. The fact is that from birth, Elena was characterized by poor health. Elena was lucky, unlike the situation with a cold-caught sixth son, which the Duke left at the mercy of fate. In her case was called a doctor and provided treatment. This was a very strange act for a duke who was characterized by extreme callousness. The servants of the castle were confused. They did not understand how they should treat Elena. Should they treat her affectionately or more strictly? So the maids unanimously decided to treat the girl like air or a ghost. Thank you, Sirius. Thanks to him, I'm able to contemplate such a fascinating sight today. All I have to do is dodge the splinters that sometimes get here. Elena thought. There really is a strong spirit in this little body, after all. Most likely the rumors about him are true. He really is the long-awaited coming of the wolf. And it's not just the incredible strength. Most likely his field of vision is wider than others, and his intuition is like a wild beast. Like Courtney said, it's hard to see the human in him, but he hasn't had time to become a monster, has he? Enough, said Duke Lowood in a loud voice. And that's all you can show me? Swing your sword haphazardly? The Duke ordered his servants to fetch a counter. The counter was a rather massive structure that was used to practice swordsmanship skills. The advantage of this construction was that it could be used to practice the same movement. The counter was notorious for being the most boring type of training. The student had to hit the same spot over and over again. Elena didn't understand why Sirius would practice techniques on this construct. The Duke walked over to the construct and drew his sword as well. He ordered Sirius to start practicing his strike. Sirius walked up to the structure and broke it into several pieces with one blow. How is that even possible? The structure looked much stronger and more massive than the one he mangled earlier. Oh, and Sirius looks confused. I wonder how the Duke will react to what happened. Helena thought in surprise. There is no room for ignorance in my house. All of your actions are clumsy, starting with the way you draw your sword. You need to learn the basics. With an angry tone, the Duke said. A red light began to emanate from his body again. Elena covered her ears with her hands and rushed to her room. She guessed how this situation would end. Most likely the Duke would just beat Sirius. Even though her father had bullied her for years on end, she couldn't see him hurting others. Elena was scared and upset to the point where she even skipped lunch. Feeling a sense of hunger, she decided to eat dinner after all. She needed to eat at least one slice of bread. Elena was very curious about what had happened to Sirius on the training ground. In the original story, he had steadfastly endured all of the Duke's bullying. Not once did he flinch no matter what the corporal punishment was. Stop thinking about that man. I only have to worry about myself, reminded Elena to herself. The girl heard the sound of the door closing, coming from the next room. She guessed that Sirius had been practicing until late afternoon and had only returned now. Elena remembered that in the original story, the Emperor had even hinted to the Duke that he wouldn't mind at all if he burned Sirius to death. Elena heard the quiet crying coming from behind the wall again. I can't stay away this time. I already didn't sleep the previous night because of his crying. Elena decided to head to the next room. Elena tried to convince herself that she was doing the right thing. Sirius is my insurance policy. It is for that reason that I need to save him. Only with his help can I get out of this quagmire. If he dies, I'll be in big trouble. In the original story, it was told that Sirius had been attempted to be poisoned several times. Therefore, he was extremely suspicious of people who tried to show concern for him or help him in any way. Elena opened the door of Sirius's room ajar and cautiously peeked inside. Sirius was lying on the bed. His body was covered in bleeding wounds. He was moaning softly. Elena felt like screaming in horror. How could someone do this to a small child? Elena ran to Sirius and gently touched his shoulder. The girl felt the heat coming from him. Elena went back to her room for a towel and cold water. The girl also grabbed some antipyretics. Elena wiped the blood from Sirius's face and gave him an antipyretic. After a while, Sirius fell soundly asleep. Elena took the wound healing ointment and treated Sirius's hands with it. The girl decided to sit beside Sirius for a while, but she didn't notice how she fell asleep. How sleepy I am after all. It's no surprise since I didn't get back to my room until just before morning. But enough lying in bed, I need to hurry up for breakfast. Elena exclaimed, stretching sweetly. Walking out of the room, Elena saw Sirius. He was sitting on the windowsill again. "Why are you out of your room so late today?" asked Sirius to the girl. "No reason. I just overslept," replied Elena. "Let's go eat breakfast soon, and know that even naivety and stupidity has its limit. And in your case, it's clearly too much of both," said Sirius, jumping off the windowsill onto the floor. As I expected, his attitude towards people can't be called normal. Yesterday, he was covered in mud and wounds. I only rubbed his face to a shine by morning. Today, he's feeling chipper and has probably grown suspicious of me for some reason. Thought Elena. Yes, he's quite dangerous and will get even more dangerous as the years go by, but I don't think I should be afraid of him. In addition, he must not know that the previous night I was the one who helped him. While I was sitting next to him, he never once opened his eyes. "When you finish, follow me," said Sirius to Elena when he finished his breakfast. Sirius led Elena to the training ground. "Wait for me here until I'm done," Sirius asked. Elena was very afraid to stay on the training ground since her father could come here at any moment. Elena walked some distance away from the training ground and sat under a tall oak tree. I remember when Sirius called me useless. His words didn't hurt me at all. On the contrary, in this place it's much worse to be useful to someone than useless, remarked Elena to herself. I like the role of being the useless youngest daughter of the Duke. I'm actually going to be comfortable riding the bus driven by the main character. I finally have a chance to enjoy the process. This world isn't as simple as I thought at the beginning. If I continue to behave as I did last night, there's a good chance that Sirius will slowly get used to my presence. Maybe then he'll be nicer to me. Thinking about what was happening in her life, Elena didn't notice how she fell asleep. When she smelled blood, she opened her eyes in surprise. Sirius was standing in front of her. He was completely covered in blood. The girl noted to herself that there were no wounds on his body. Then whose blood is this? Sirius silently held out his bloody hand to the girl. Elena guessed that he wanted her to take his hand. "Sirius, you're doing a great job. You've done a great job in a short period of time," praised Elena. Elena stroked Sirius's head affectionately. "Since you say that, does that mean you saw me fight from here? You know, even the knights were surprised when they saw that monster. I was put to fight a monster that was captured to train the knights," narrated Sirius. "Ah, that's why it's covered in blood," Elena guessed. She didn't bother to tell Sirius that she hadn't seen him fight. She praised the boy because she just felt sorry for him. Suddenly, Sirius rose to his feet and walked away. As usual, he didn't say anything to the girl or even say goodbye. He left me alone again without saying a word. I was even speechless with indignation. However, I'm even glad it ended well. A few days later, Elena heard crying again behind the wall. She cautiously crept into Sirius's room again. The picture was the same. He lay bloodied on the bed and moaned softly. From the servants' conversations, Elena learned that Sirius's erratic ball skills under Duke Loud's tutelage had begun to improve rapidly. He was characterized by amazing resilience and perseverance from the very beginning. He came to the training ground every day. Sirius's innate strong spirit combined with his undeniable talent could not go unnoticed. The servants began to call him a genius, and the Duke began to take an increasing interest in him. It got to the point where the Duke's son Joseph became jealous of Sirius. Seeing the enmity between Joseph and Sirius the Duke suggested that they fight each other. He was curious to see which of the two of them would emerge victorious. The suggestion that Joseph might lose to an opponent with whom he had a gap of several years of swordsmanship training made him unable to think straight. So he attacked before the countdown was over. Sirius managed to block the lunge with his sword. Despite the obvious rule violations, the Duke did not give an order to stop the fight. The moment the puzzled Sirius cast a glance in the Duke's direction, Joseph's sharp sword stabbed into his body. "What a pity. And you were able to dodge that blow after all," muttered the Duke. Since Joseph had forbidden the doctors from entering Sirius's room, Elena had to treat his wound. The girl was very afraid that Sirius would get blood poisoning and die. This situation was not described in the book. Suddenly there was disagreement with the plot again. I really hope that he will pull through and in a few years he will take revenge on all his abusers. There's no way he should die. Only he can save me from this crazy family, thought Elena while treating Sirius's wounds. Tears flowed unceasingly down the girl's cheeks. Damn, what's gotten into me? Now is not the time for such thoughts. I have a bandage problem to solve. I used more than I intended. I didn't realize he was bleeding so badly. Elena wanted to go in search of bandages, but Sirius suddenly grabbed her arm. His violet eyes flashed with an unkind light. I sense danger. I need to get out of here as soon as possible. Helena's mind flashed. What's this all about? Sirius asked. Elena wanted to run away, but Sirius yanked the girl sharply towards him. Unable to keep her balance, Elena fell on top of Sirius. We're too close to each other. What should I do? And what am I going to say to him in my defense? Elena thought. Anyway, ignore it. It's all in your dreams, said Elena, covering Sirius's eyes with her hands. Suddenly, Sirius laughed out loud, his aura glowing with multicolored lights again. See, you realize for yourself that it's all a dream. You'll forget everything with the first rays of the sun. Come on, go to sleep quickly. Your eyelids are getting heavy. You want to sleep, Elena exclaimed. A moment later, she heard Sirius's steady breathing. He fell asleep. That's crazy. Maybe I have a talent for hypnosis? Elena thought in surprise. If I keep interfering with the plot of the novel, I'll eventually be written dead, too. Maybe I should run away from this house after all. But where would a 10-year-old child live? Even though this house treats me badly, I still have a roof over my head and some food. On top of that, I need to heal Sirius. There's no one else to help him but me. Although his condition has stabilized, he is still very pale. I should apply medicinal ointment to his wound and change the bandage. In order to destroy the Lowood family, he must survive. Elena decided to herself that as soon as she had the opportunity, she would immediately try to escape from the house. She could not be allowed to be destroyed along with her family. Luckily, Elena had a golden eye with which she could see any changes in people's moods and behavior. Elena began to constantly think about where she could get money. She needed to find an occupation that would bring in an income. Unfortunately, she didn't have any precious things. Elena knew that for the next few years, Sirius wouldn't do anything to her or her family. So she had time to think of something. Opening her bedroom door, Elena saw Sirius again. The girl guessed that he had just recently returned from training. Blood was dripping from his boots onto the floor. Elena noted to herself that Sirius was in high spirits. Even though his wound was still bleeding, he was still smiling. Sirius motioned for the girl to follow him. Of course, I was going to run as soon as I noticed something strange, but I had no idea the change would be in this direction, remarked Elena to herself. Is there something you want to tell me? Asked Sirius. Elena started to deny everything. Sometimes she thought that Sirius was sensitive to people too. Coming into the kitchen, Sirius helped the girl pour the soup into the soup tureen. A bright yellow color emanated from him. Such a mood of serious Elena was extremely frightened and puzzled. Why had he suddenly changed? What had caused such a change? Maybe he decided that what happened tonight was a dream. Because of the situation, I can't eat anything. I've completely lost my appetite. Elena thought to herself. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Elena was very surprised by it. No one had ever come into the dining room while she was eating before. Sirius allowed the knocker to enter. A maid entered the room. Ahead of her, she was pushing a cart that held lamb-covered dishes. Your Highness Sirius, I'm sorry to interrupt your breakfast, but his lordship has ordered dishes to be prepared for you that will aid in your speedy recovery, said the maid. Elena knew that good food in a ducal household still had to be earned. Since Sirius was brought a special meal, it spoke to the fact that he had managed to gain the Duke's recognition and earn a reward. Sirius held out a piece of meat to the girl. Can I really accept food from him? Apparently he's going to stare at me until I eat a piece of this meat. Well, since they're giving it to me, I should just eat it. Elena thought and swallowed the meat almost without chewing. It had been a long time since Elena had eaten meat dishes. The meat that Sirius had been served was just perfect. "You know, I had a dream about you last night," Sirius said unexpectedly. Elena froze in place fearfully. She really hoped he wouldn't remember what had happened the night before. It was a blessing that he took it all as just a dream. Come to think of it, this isn't the first time you've appeared to me in a dream. In the previous dream, you were just holding my hand. Sirius held out another piece of meat to Elena. "Why aren't you answering me anything? What are you thinking about?" "What was that dream I visited you about?" Elena decided to herself that it wouldn't be a big deal if she and Sirius had a little chat. "No big deal. It was just a nice dream. Look, don't be shy. You can eat all the food on this table." Sirius held out plates of bread and fish to the girl. When Sirius arrived at the Duchy of Lowood, he had a glimmer of hope. He was glad that he had finally managed to escape from the repulsive Imperial Palace. In the Imperial Palace, Sirius was merely the coming of the wolf and only paid lip service to being a prince. His half-brother couldn't kill him personally, but he very much wished for his death. Sirius's food was often laced with poison. Sirius knew the food was poisoned, but ate it anyway because of the unbearable feeling of hunger. Sirius always dreamed of having a simple life. He wanted to live like all normal people do. He really wanted to make friends that he could spend his free time with. Sirius dreamed of surrounding himself with people who were not dangerous to him. When Sirius saw the Duke, he immediately realized that nothing good was waiting for him in this house. He had already seen the look the Duke gave him. Sirius realized that the Imperial Palace and the Duchy of Lowood were all the same nightmare. As they walked through the palace, the Duke explored Sirius with his eyes. The other members of the Lowood family were no different from him. Sirius couldn't help but notice the subtle shadow of hostility in their eyes. Sirius decided to respond with hostility to hostility. It was how he had survived the Imperial Palace. Sirius guessed that in the Duke's house, the same fate awaited him as the Imperial Palace. It occurred to Sirius that no matter where he went, his life never changed for the better. Sirius's life began to change when he ran into the Duke's youngest daughter. She had large golden eyes and looked more like a member of the Lowood family than anyone else. Elena was very different from the rest of the house's inhabitants. She was embarrassed when she saw Sirius and was the first to say goodnight to him. Even though Sirius had spoken rather rudely to Elena in the early days, she had always responded to him with kindness. Elena was the one thing that made the Duke's house different from the Imperial Palace. Upon realizing this, Sirius cried the entire first night. Elena noticed that Sirius was enveloped in a gray haze. This told her that he was visited by depressive thoughts. Elena wondered what he was thinking about. Taking a few sips, Elena accidentally choked on her tea. Sirius ran to the girl and patted her back. "Aren't you in any pain? For some reason you started coughing a lot out of the blue. Maybe you're sick?" Sirius asked in a worried voice. "No, I'm not sick. I started drinking my tea too fast, so I choked," replied Elena. Sirius's behavior surprised her. She never thought he could show concern for someone. After breakfast, Sirius offered to let the girl watch him practice. "Here I am again. I couldn't say no to him. Now I have to watch him practice. I hope I'm doing it right," thought Elena. The girl heard someone's cautious footsteps. Turning her head, she saw her brother Joseph. "Why are you here?" wondered Elena. "Did you just talk to me now?" Joseph exclaimed. He considered Elena untouchable. He always followed his father's orders, as he wanted very much to earn his recognition. "I know why you came here. You want to watch me serve my punishment," said Joseph, much to Elena's surprise. She hadn't heard anything about his punishment. Elena noticed that her brother was wearing the clothes of a squire. The girl guessed that he had been ordered to work as a servant for a while as punishment for breaking the rules of the duel. Why should I even look at you? I don't do such useless things, said Elena and turned away from her brother. This is getting out of hand. Don't you even consider me as your brother? How dare a little bug like you ignore me? If you apologize to me right now, I'll forgive you, Joseph exclaimed. Joseph noticed his sister looking somewhere over his shoulder. Turning around, Joseph saw Sirius walking towards them. You mean it's Sirius? But it can't be. What is he doing here? Joseph exclaimed. He didn't know that since Sirius had wolf blood in his veins, wounds on him healed much faster than on a normal human. This is crazy. It was only yesterday that we fought you. I remember exactly how I wounded you. Why are you here? Joseph grabbed Sirius by the shoulders and shook him hard. And when did I ever give you permission to talk to me informally? Sirius asked Joseph. Joseph jerked his hands away fearfully. If you don't have anything to say, then stop interrupting me and get out of my sight, said Sirius in a nonchalant tone. What do you have going on here? Asked the children as the Duke approached. Sirius, I told you to rest today. I see you still haven't left the training ground. Well now, my worst expectations have come true. My father has shown up at the training ground. Now something terrible is going to happen. The premonition of something bad hasn't left me for days. Elena thought fearfully. I thought I'd have a word with Joseph, said Sirius. Joseph? And what did Sirius wanted to talk to you about? Asked the Duke to his son. Sirius, I mean His Highness, asked me if he gave me permission to speak to him informally, Joseph admitted. Elena noticed the colors of gray and lettuce flying around the Duke. This indicated that the Duke was extremely interested in the situation. Joseph, follow me, ordered the Duke to his son. Follow me, said Sirius, and taking Elena's hand, he dragged her behind him. Elena, is there anywhere in this house you would like to go? Did Sirius really lead me there without knowing where to go himself? Or did he get lost in the palace? To be honest, I have absolutely no desire to go anywhere, thought Elena. Elena, I got one great idea. What do you usually do at this time? Usually closer to lunchtime. I'm reading books in the library, Elena admitted. Then let's go to the library together with you, suggested Sirius. You see, the process of choosing books to read is very time-consuming. Plus, if someone is around me, I'm not able to concentrate on reading, Elena replied. She was really creeped out by the fact that Sirius had decided to get close to her. So that's how it is, mumbled Sirius. A white haze immediately enveloped his body. Well, if I'm going to bother you, then let me wait for you outside. Sirius looked so cute that Elena couldn't refuse him. You look cuter when you smile. It makes me happy to see a smile on your lips, said Sirius. Left alone in the library, Elena was finally able to catch her breath. Lately, she had been constantly afraid of doing something wrong. She was worried that her actions might cause negative consequences. Oh, and then there's that Sirius with his angelic face. I'm going to go crazy from all this soon. I didn't happen to have any brain-paralyzing drugs slipped into my food during breakfast, did I? Why am I acting like this? Elena exclaimed. Sirius ran an offensive operation using his looks as a trump card, and I just took it and surrendered without a fight. He really was very nice. However, I can't relax. I need to pull myself together. I read that novel. I remember perfectly well that Sirius with his angelic face will later destroy the entire empire. I need to be careful, but what exactly should I be wary of? So, Sirius is good at physical attacks. He's also a master of mental tricks with which he can completely master the minds of others. That's most likely the reason why, after killing several brides, he still had no problem making engagements. In the original story, there was a case where Sirius seduced a young lady to get rid of the opposition with her help. Even though that girl doubted Sirius's intentions, she still couldn't refuse the engagement. She was fascinated by his looks. What's most interesting is that the original story didn't say much about Sirius's childhood. It just told us that Duke Lowood became his teacher and raised him into a monster. "Hey, you!" shouted his sister as Joseph approached. A black haze enveloped him. Elena guessed that he was in a disgusted mood at the moment. Usually, Joseph just tries to hurt me or humiliate me in every way possible. It's extremely hard for me to deal with him when he's in such a bad mood. Why are you frozen again? Why are you standing there like that? It won't take much from you. Just give this thing to Sirius, and add that it was given to him by our father. Joseph held out some sort of oblong object to his sister. What is it? Elena asked Joseph. You filthy parasite, asking me that? You were told to just hand it over, exclaimed Joseph. He swung the oblong object he held in his hands. Elena covered her head with her hands, waiting for the blow. When no blow came, Elena opened her eyes cautiously. Beside her, she saw Sirius. Sorry, you asked me to wait for you outside, but I came in anyway, said Sirius. You shouldn't apologize for that at all, exclaimed Elena. Elena, wait for me on the sidelines. I'll be right back. Sirius gently stroked the girl's head. All right. Since this item is already in your hands, then I'll be going, said Joseph and hurriedly retreated. Sirius threw an oblong object at Joseph. After that, Sirius ran up to Joseph and kicked him in the stomach. With a loud scream, Joseph fell on his back. A pile of books fell from the bookshelves onto Joseph. Elena noticed that a red haze had appeared around Sirius. Excitement awoke in him, excitement bubbling in his blood. You bastard! How dare you hit me over such a trifle! Joseph shouted, rising to his feet. I'll have you now. A furious Joseph lunged at Sirius. Sirius grabbed Joseph's arm, temporarily paralyzing him. Wait, is this kid really that much stronger than me? Ran through Joseph's mind. He felt an intense pain stiffen his wrist. Quickly let go of my arm! I said stop it! Shouted Joseph. Sirius let go of Joseph's hand and pushed him away from him. Joseph collapsed back onto the books. Now that nasty smirk is finally gone from his face. The little brat who only needs a gentle squeeze of the hand to make him crawl to his feet. And he almost caused Elena's serious injury. Thought Sirius. Sirius walked over to Joseph and stepped his foot on his wrist. Look, why are you doing this to me? Are you really doing all this because of Elena? I could just apologize to her, Joseph exclaimed. I don't need your apology. Is there any meaning in insignificant words? Apologies are just pretty phrases that don't have the power to make someone act one way or the other, replied Sirius. Elena, do you think I should break his arm so he can never swing at you again? Asked Sirius to the girl. Turning around, Sirius noticed that Elena covered her head with her hands, shaking her whole body. The girl was in a state of shock. Elena, what's wrong? Are you in pain? Sirius took a quick step towards the girl. How can you stay calm when someone is being brutally beaten in front of your eyes? A moment ago, watching Sirius with his sweet, angelic face giving Joseph blow after blow, I distinctly felt like I was in a violent affair. Thought Elena. You have no fever, your forehead is cold. What's going on then? Sirius asked again. But if you think about it, Sirius did this to help me. He grew up in a violent environment, so he doesn't know how to deal with the problems that have arisen any other way. The girl thought to herself. It's okay, I'm fine. I'm just a little scared, Elena admitted. I knew it. Your health is too poor. Sirius hefted Elena onto his back and carried her to her room. I have no idea why Sirius suddenly changed his attitude towards me. However, one thing I can say about myself is that I'm still terribly uncomfortable being around him. That's why I'm not even able to ask him to get me down from the back. Thought the girl. Sirius carried Elena to her room and lowered her to the floor. I didn't get a chance to tell you this earlier. Thank you for helping me. Elena bowed to Sirius in gratitude. What a relief to see the blush back on your cheeks. Now I'm convinced that you really were just scared, said Sirius to the girl. Well, clearly Sirius was very puzzled, since he himself has never once felt a sense of fear in his entire life. It's hard for me to explain to him that I'm terrified of violence. Elena, why don't you and I go to the teacher and tell him about you and me? Sirius suggested unexpectedly. Why? Asked a pale Elena. If you're afraid, you can take my hand. I completely understand your fear, however. We have to do this. Sirius held out an open palm to the girl. And if I don't want to go, will you go to the Duke alone? Elena asked. Sirius confirmed her hunch. With or without her, he would still go to the Duke. "All right, since you're so determined, then let's go together," Elena exclaimed. Sirius took the girl's hand and headed towards the Duke's office. Elena began to regret her decision, but it was too late. "I heard that Joseph was beaten by Sirius, and that in the process of beating him he failed to respond once to his opponent's attacks," said Duke Laud. "That's exactly right. It was only a couple minutes ago that the butler reported the incident to me," replied Courtney. "I've been personally involved in his training for several years, and in the end it turns out he's only capable of being a punching bag and nothing more." The Duke picked up a table lamp and threw it at the girl. The lamp whistled past Courtney's ear. As it hit the wall, it shattered into small shards. "I must not show my fear. I am my father's closest associate. Only by enduring all these sparks flying from all sides will I be able to get the position of successor," thought Courtney. "I need to become the head of the family. Then I can get my hands on untold riches that even the emperor would envy. I'll have a mountain field with an endless supply of magical stones. Also, once I take the place of the head of the family, I will have the right to oppress and humiliate anyone who dares to say a word against me. Only I have the right to take such an honorable position." "You wretch! I wish it was Sirius who was my son. Of all the people I've met in my life, he has the most outstanding qualities. Don't you think so?" asked the Duke to his daughter. "I absolutely agree with you," replied Courtney. "No matter how much I ponder on the matter, it would be a shame to just take him and kill him. But should I honor the Emperor's request? That's a question that's been nagging at me for a long time." The Duke admitted. Even though the ducal family possessed the Golden Eye ability, they had always been subordinate to the Imperial House of Hyperion. Even though every member of the Lowood family could read human emotions, overthrowing the Hyperion clan, where demigods were periodically born, and succeeding in a political conspiracy was not an easy task. The Duke was aware that it had been a long time since the Imperial family had a person who had inherited wolf blood. For this reason, the solid foundation under the feet of the Hyperion family had begun to crack at the seams. And even Sirius, the coming of the wolf, was now in the Lowood family. "We have a unique chance to change history. We have no choice but to make Sirius a human of the Lowood family. The easiest way to accomplish this goal is through marriage," said the Duke. "Fortunately, I still have 2 daughters left. My lord, His Highness Sirius and young Mistress Elena request your audience," said a maid who entered. "It couldn't have come at a better time. If only Elena had come, I would have denied her an audience," thought the Duke. The Duke allowed his eldest daughter, Courtney, to return to her room. Courtney reluctantly left her father's study. She was anxious to hear what her sister and Prince Sirius would be talking to her father about. "Greetings, master. I apologize for appearing before you at this late hour," Sirius said in a loud voice. "You don't need to apologize. If I didn't want to see you, I would have simply responded by refusing your request," replied the Duke. He noted to himself that there wasn't even a haze of excitement around Sirius. The Duke looked at his daughter. As always, her emotions were closed to him. He didn't see anything. "At one time, I thought she was special because of the fact that she could not be read. But now I just find it endlessly distasteful to look at this squalor," thought the Duke. "I've come to be rewarded. I've gotten something I've been wanting to get my hands on," said Sirius. "I remember today at practice I told you that if you won, you could ask me for a reward," replied the Duke. "I remember you said I would have teachers soon. Now I want to study with Elena. That is the reward I wish to receive," Sirius said in a firm, confident tone. "Now I can see why they hold hands all the time. I see Sirius has found someone to bond with at the ducal residence. Things have worked out just fine." Rejoiced to himself, the Duke said, "Just a few minutes ago, I thought of tying Sirius to the Duchy of Lowood through marriage, but I never expected him to make the first move himself. Rather than making a marriage of convenience, it's better to bind Sirius to a relationship based on sincere affection." And here I thought my stupid daughter would be of no use to me. She finally has a chance to do something for the Lowood family. I hope at least this time she'll do some good. Otherwise, killing Elena's real father will be pointless. Lanos Lowood and Hugo Lowood were identical twins. They were very similar in appearance, but had completely different personalities. Hugo never smiled, but Lenos's smile never left his face. All members of the Lowood family, except for the heir, were forbidden to continue the bloodline. In a word, it was impossible to create a lateral line. If children with golden eyes were to be born here and there, it could have a detrimental effect on the Lode family. However, Lanos fell in love with Stacy, a servant girl born into an aristocratic family that had collapsed. In doing so, he broke a cardinal rule of the family. Hugo had to kill his brother and his lover. He decided to keep the girl with him. That way, no one would know that the Lode family had a sideline. Lenos's daughter was born with unique, bright yellow eyes. Only one other person in the history of the Lowood family had such eyes before Elena was born. The family chronicles said that this person could see not only emotions, but also the future of the world. Hugo really hoped that Elena, thanks to her abilities, would become the savior of the Lowood family. However, the girl was a disappointment to Hugo. She didn't show any special abilities. "All right, Sirius. Since it's about your reward, I'll honor your request," said the Duke. "I was very much surprised, but it still makes me happy that my father has given his consent," admitted Elena. "Elena, I want to tell you one big secret. To tell you the truth, I can't read. I was afraid to tell your father about it, as he would surely consider it a weakness. I want you to teach me how to read." After this conversation, Sirius came regularly to the girl's room where she taught him to read and write. "Sirius, why are you suddenly starting to be so nice to me?" Elena asked. It was a question that had been plaguing her for weeks. "You treat me well. Why should I do otherwise?" Sirius answered the question with a question. The original story told that Sirius was suspicious of those who treated him well. So why was Elena the exception to the rule? Maybe because she was the seventh daughter who was never mentioned once in the book. "Did you really decide to bring all those books with you to read afterward?" asked Elena, looking at Sirius, dragging a stack of books towards the exit. "To be honest, I'm not a very good teacher, but I'm still glad that despite my rambling teaching, you were still able to learn something." "That's okay. I've learned a lot one way or another, and these lessons have shown me once again that I wasn't wrong. I noticed that you were very diligent in teaching me. From that, I can conclude that you have the will in you," said Sirius. "If you find the right role for you in the future, you can become a useful person. Useless people have no choice but to die quickly. Therefore, in order to survive, you have to be useful." Right now, I felt a little uncomfortable around him. I let my guard down for a moment. I need to constantly remember that Sirius is an unusual person. He has a bit of a monster in him, Elena thought. "Well, I'll see you tomorrow. As early as tomorrow morning, we will continue our training," shouted Sirius and walked out of the girl's room. No matter how you look at it, Sirius is the main character of this piece. So no matter what happens, he will still end up living a sheltered life. I need to rethink my plans if I want to survive, thought Elena before going to bed. If you consider the way Sirius has been treating me lately, it's safe to assume that he considers me his ally. However, I'm not sure I can survive being around him. What do I need to do to get him to distance himself from me? Sirius told me today that I should be helpful, so I have to show him that I'm completely useless. If I'm the truest mediocrity, then Sirius will lose all interest in me. From this day forward, I will demonstrate my worthlessness. I've often heard that children play family. Why don't you and I play too? Asked Sirius to Elena. Yes, let's play. Do you know the rules of this game? Inquired Elena. Sirius answered the girl that he had never played such a game. In this game, each player is assigned a certain role. You have to play out those characters. In short, you have to play out a scene from the life of an ordinary married couple or something like that. Elena explained. "But I don't want to fight with you," Sirius admitted. Why fight? Elena didn't understand. Whenever the maids of the imperial court chatted, the conversation most often turned to quarrels between spouses, replied Sirius. "You've probably got it all wrong. Now I'll show you everything clearly," Elena exclaimed, jumping up from her seat. The girl decided that she had a great chance to show her worthlessness. "Look, I've drawn a line. Everything inside that line is our home. You and I are going to play the perfect family where spouses treat each other with respect, so remember to address me as you. I hope you've learned the rules. Now you have to pretend you're coming home." Elena pushed Sirius out of line. "I'm here," exclaimed Sirius, pretending as he swung the doors of the room open. "My dear husband is finally back!" Helena shouted joyfully. "Dear husband," a blushing Sirius interjected. Look at the way he was taken aback by the phrase, "dear husband." We should have played something like that a long time ago. Maybe he'll be uncomfortable with me and run away, Elena thought. Then Elena and Sirius cooked a fake dinner, after which they went to bed. "Once we wake up, our game of family will be over," said Elena. "Still, it's a shame that this game will be over. Playing family is quite fun. Dear wife, I wish you could play this game with me tomorrow too," said Sirius. "Did that man just call me dear wife? If I remember correctly, he will kill more than 10 of his brides in the future. And he thinks playing family is fun?" Startled, Elena thought to herself. "I'm feeling pretty good right now," said Sirius. Looking at him, Elena decided that she would never play family with him again. Elena decided to visit her brother Joseph. After what happened in the library, he took a very long time to come to his senses. "And why did you just bully me in the library? Is making life difficult for yourself your favorite thing to do?" Elena asked her brother. "Why did you come here? Do you want to pick a fight?" Joseph inquired. "Actually, no, I came to get my apology. You used to demand all the time that I act like your little sister, so now as your little sister, I came to count you out." Elena replied. "Tell me, do you consider yourself guilty for what happened?" "Yes, I shouldn't have acted like that," mumbled Joseph. He knew that in that bundle lay a sword. The Duke had decided to give it to Sirius. Joseph was eaten up with envy, so he acted extremely aggressive. "Do you think if I give Sirius my sincere apology, he'll get off my wrist?" Joseph asked his sister. Suddenly his eyes filled with tears. Elena was extremely surprised by what she saw. She had never seen her brother crying before. The girl realized that he was only pretending to be brave. In fact, he was just a scared child. Joseph was very afraid that if he showed his weakness, he would immediately be thrown out by his father for nothing. Elena even felt a little sorry for him. "Okay, now stop acting like that. Just watch your tongue and be careful of your actions, and then nothing will happen to you," Elena exclaimed. The next day, Elena decided to teach Sirius how to spell her name correctly. She took a wand in her hands and began to write out letters on the ground. "Elena, I really like watching you write my name," Sirius admitted. Elena noticed that Sirius's aura had taken on a delicate, peachy hue. It spoke of the happiness Sirius was experiencing at the moment. Sirius reached over to the girl and kissed her on the cheek. "So, what do you want to play today? How about family again?" asked Sirius to the girl. "No, today you and I are going to watch ants. I want to assure you that this is an extremely fascinating activity," exclaimed Elena. She hoped that Sirius would quickly get bored of watching the ants and go about his business. Elena led Sirius to a large anthill. They sat down near the anthill and watched the ants work. To be honest, at first I thought watching the ants would be boring. But like you said, it turned out to be quite interesting, exclaimed Sirius excitedly. "Sirius, the maids told me that you went to see my father. Why did he call you to his house?" asked Elena. "Master warned me that he would be leaving for a few days in the capital. He also said he was already looking for a tutor for me," replied Sirius. "Sirius, I heard that this forest is over 200 years old, and to be honest, the thought of exploring it has never crossed my mind. I really like to watch the sunlight coming through the leaves. Look, there's something shiny up there in the tree. Let's go closer and see what it is. On the tree, Elena found a gold pendant. From the fact that it was lying in the hollow of this tree, I can deduce that this pendant was hidden there by someone, said Sirius. Elena decided to open the pendant and see what was inside. Inside the pendant was a picture of a blonde-haired girl. Judging from the inscription, her name was Stacy. Elena clutched the pendant to her chest and ran towards the house. Elena ran to the backyard of the estate where the family cemetery was located. She was sure this was where she had seen Stacy's name. Elena led Sirius over to one of the graves. The gravestone had Stacy's name engraved on it. "This is where my mom is buried," said Elena. "I was told as a child that my mother died of childbirth fever. My father had only one wife all his life, and she died shortly after the birth of his sixth son. I, on the other hand, am an illegitimate child. When I was very young, I heard the maids whispering about my father flirting with a maid named Stacy. They said she had the same green eyes as the Duchess, which is why she caught the Duke's eye. I once asked my father if my mother had any relatives, to which he told me that my mother was a round orphan. All sorts of negative emotions raged around him, so I was afraid to revisit the subject again. Elena, I think the girl in that picture is really your mother. You and her look very much alike. In particular, you both have round-shaped faces. Sirius. You know, I think so too. I feel like that's exactly how it is. Sirius, I've decided to confess to you that when I get out of this castle, I'm going to go looking for my mother. I will certainly leave this place. I haven't told anyone, but I'm going to find my own roots outside of the Lowood family. I want to erase my life in this house from my memory forever. But if you want to escape from here so badly, I'll help you do it, Sirius promised. A week later, the Duke returned from his trip. He decided to gather all the children, including Sirius, in his study. Sirius, as I promised, I have brought you tutors. The core subjects will be taught by Viscount Dalton. Classes start tomorrow, so you should visit him and say hello. Meeting adjourned. Everyone is dismissed except Elena. Elena was very afraid to be alone with the Duke. Negative emotions had been raging around him lately. Elena, it's been a long time since you and I had a heart-to-heart talk. I know you've been through a lot of hardships. From now on, I'll give you back what you should have enjoyed originally. It's time for you to return to the main body of the residence. You can go now. Have I really been moved to another room? I am finally in a room befitting the status of a precious ducal daughter. But why am I not feeling joy? Thought Elena, looking at the decoration of her new room. I know the Duke is the kind of man who gives something when people fulfill his expectations. But I haven't done anything. Plus, I'm still hiding my true abilities. What does he want from me? Today, he touched me with the hand he tried to kill me with several times. Does he really expect that if he shows me even a little kindness, I will immediately throw myself on his neck with tears of happiness in my eyes? He'll never expect that from me. I won't fall for his tricks again. Since Elena couldn't sleep for a long time, she decided to take a walk around the palace at night. Next to Elena's room was Sirius's room. In between these rooms was a common living room. It was in this living room that Elena found Sirius. "Sirius, why are you still awake?" asked Elena. She was glad to see her friend awake at such a late hour. "I can't sleep for some reason. I decided to drink some warm milk. If you want some, I'll pour some for you too," replied Sirius. "Sirius, why are you looking at me like that? Is there something you want to tell me?" Elena inquired. Sirius poured the girl warm milk as promised. "That outfit really suits you. You look really cute in that nightgown," said Sirius. "Sirius, already tomorrow you and I are going to have a tutoring session. Are you excited about that?" "I don't even know what to say to you. At the thought of us attending classes together, I feel joy. I'm looking forward to going tomorrow." After thinking for a bit, Sirius replied, "Elena, why don't we sleep here together tonight? It just seems to me that you don't want to go to bed in your new room either. Or am I wrong after all?" "No, you're right. It's the hovering silence in there that scares me. In my old room, I could hear everything that was going on behind the wall," said Elena, rubbing her sleepy eyes. 4 years flew by unnoticed. Elena found Sirius in the ducal garden. She had recently promised him that she would set aside a whole day to spend with him. It was time to fulfill that promise. Ah, the long-awaited ice cream. If I had known that my favorite strawberry ice cream would be here, I would have run even faster, Elena exclaimed. What did your dad tell you today? Asked Sirius to the girl. The Duke's attitude towards his youngest daughter had changed a lot over the past 4 years. He was giving her the best of everything, fulfilling her every wish. In addition, the Duke began to treat Elena more affectionately, as in her childhood. One day, the Duke even confessed to Elena that she was the only child he loved. At this, the Duke looked at her with distressed, pitying eyes. Since Elena was able to read emotions, she knew that all these words were blatant lies. Speaking to the girl about his fatherly love, the Duke felt bored. Today my father asked me how I was doing, asked me to speak if I needed anything. Basically threw around corny phrases. Elena narrated. She gently took Sirius under her arm. Don't touch me, Sirius asked. Over the past 4 years, he had turned into a petulant, prickly teenager. 4 years ago, there had been an incident that had almost cost Sirius and Elena their lives. That day, it was business as usual. Nothing portended trouble. The maid brought Elena and Sirius tea and cookies as usual. I've never seen you before. Who are you? Asked Sirius to the maid. My name is Gina. I've been serving Viscount Dalton since he moved to the capital, replied the maid. I see. You're free to go, so you can go, said Sirius. Sirius reached for his liver, but Elena slapped him painfully on the arm. Don't touch anything. There's obviously something wrong with this cookie, Elena exclaimed. The girl was sure that the maid was an assassin whose target was Sirius. Elena noticed the intense hostility that hovered around the maid. In addition, she moved as if she was about to strike. I suggest you stay in this living room. It's unlikely that poison was added to the cookies. It was most likely put sleeping pills in it, said Sirius. Look, Elena, you and I are on the same side, aren't we? Asked Sirius. The girl rushed to assure him that she was and would always be on his side. Then just trust me. There's no way I'm going to let my ally get hurt, Sirius said with a cheerful smile. He was very glad that he finally had someone in his life who was loyal to him.